Good morning, BookTube. I thought I'd make a video since it's been a day and I'm sitting alone here on a Sunday morning. It is 10:26 here in West Michigan. It is April the 23rd. It's a Christian Sabbath day, a day of rest. My wife has gone to church. I'm sitting here writing in my diary, having a fresh cup of coffee, and been reading still this morning St. John of the Cross, reading the Spiritual Canticle, and that's what I've been reading this morning. Usually I read St. John of the Cross throughout every year. Like I said, I first read the Spiritual Canticle 45 years ago, but I didn't really get back into reading St. John of the Cross until we moved to Houston, Texas, back in the 80s. I think it was around the late 80s, if I remember correctly, middle 80s. I have a hard time remembering time. But when we were in not in Grand Rapids, but in Houston, Texas, I was doing my internship in a Covenant PCA, Presbyterian Church in America, conservative evangelical Presbyterian denomination, and that's when I really got back into reading St. John of the Cross. And because when I was in seminary, one of the last classes I took in seminary was it was like an elective class on Christian spirituality. And the man who taught it was an Anglican called priest from England. Forgot his name right now, just skipped my mind. But he was really into Christian spirituality, the contemplative life, and he did a class on prayer and contemplation and spirituality. And I did my paper on that class. I think I did on Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy. But anyway, he mentioned St. John of the Cross in his class, and I had St. John of the Cross works in our library. Anyway, so I got back into reading St. John of the Cross, and when we moved to Houston, I got more into it, got into Christian spirituality, Thomas Merton, and I started going, there was the only seminary library that I was always looking for good books, and since I didn't, so I looked for a seminary so I could use their library when I was in Houston, Texas, because a lot of the books that I needed to teach Sunday school classes and preach, I didn't have at that time in my own library, so I would use theological libraries. I mentioned here in town we have Western Theological Seminary. In Grand Rapids we have Calvin Seminary, Puritan Reformed Theological Seminary. But in Houston, we lived close to a Catholic seminary, St. Mary's Seminary. So that's where I would go to check out books, and I really got into reading on the contemplative life and prayer and Catholic spirituality and all that. And I started buying books from a Catholic bookstore in Houston, Texas. And that's how I got back into St. John of the Cross. And that has continued since we moved up here from Houston 27 years ago now. So yeah, I've just been reading St. John of the Cross in the mornings, the Spiritual Canticle. I still want to talk about this with Annie Dillard and John Piper and Singing the Glory of God and the impact of that on a person's life, a Christian's life. So yeah, I've been reading that in the morning, and yesterday I volunteered at the library used bookstore, the Book Nook, and for my free book for volunteering, I picked up the Winter Journal by Paul Auster. This is a memoir of his life. He starts with his most earliest memories as a child, and it covers up until his 63 or 64 years old. And I really got into this. Well, you know, I really like reading memoirs, letters, diaries, autobiographies, biographies. But so I read this all afternoon. I read 105 pages yesterday, and it's only 229. I probably could read this, finish it one day, but we'll see. I don't know. But I ordered another. He wrote another memoir after this one that I ordered this morning from Amazon, that goes more fuller into his life as a writer and as an intellectual poet. And so yeah, that will be coming in the mail probably this week. So yeah, I enjoyed reading this yesterday, the Winter Journal by Paul Auster. This is a memoir. It says here, on January the 3rd, 2011, exactly 1 month before his 64th birthday, internationally acclaimed novelist Paul Auster sat down and wrote the first entry of Winter Journal. His unorthodox, beautifully wrought examination of his own life as seen through the history of his body. Auster takes us from childhood to the brink of old age as he summons forth a universe of physical sensation, of pleasures, pains, moving from awakening of sexual desire as an adolescent to the ever-deepening bonds of marital love. From meditations on eating and sleeping to the scalding was an ephanic moment of clarity in 1978 that set him on a new course as a writer. So yeah, so I really enjoyed reading this yesterday. And I also read late evening, and I read it until I went to bed last night. The Ambulance Drivers, Hemingway, Das Pastos, and a Friendship Made and Lost in War by James McGrath Morris. Yeah, I was reading this in the evening hours. I read up until about 11 o'clock last night. So yeah, James McGrath Morris, I found out that he wrote a biography on Pulitzer, and I got it in the mail yesterday. As I mentioned in videos, I collect, if I find a biographer that I really like, I start buying all the biographies that they have written. So I bought this one used for $10 from Amazon. Pulitzer, A Life in Politics, Print and Power by James McGrath Morris. This is Joseph Pulitzer is better known today for the prize that bears his name. Those who know about what has just recently, the Pulitzer Prizes were announced in poetry, fiction, nonfiction, journalism, all those. You can read them online. Yet in 19th century industrial America, while Carnegie provided the steel, Rockefeller the oil, Morgan the money, Vanderbilt the railroads, Pulitzer ushered in the modern mass media. James McGrath Morris traces the epic story of this Jewish Hungarian immigrant's rise to American politics, into journalism where he accumulated immense power and wealth, only to fall blind and become a lonely, tormented recluse wandering the globe. But not before Pulitzer transformed American journalism into a medium of mass consumption and immense influence. As the first media Byron to recognize the vast social changes of the Industrial Revolution, he harnessed all the converging elements of entertainment, technology, business, demographics, and made newspaper an essential feature of urban life. Pulitzer used his influence to advance a progressive political agenda and his power to fight those who opposed him. The course he followed led him to battle Theodore Roosevelt, who, when president, tried to send Pulitzer to prison. The grueling legal battles Pulitzer endured for freedom of the press changed the landscape of American newspapers and politics. So yeah, I got this in the mail yesterday because, like I said, and also I have been looking at this Pulitzer even before I ordered this book, because when the Pulitzer Prizes came out, I said, I don't know anything about Pulitzer. Who was this guy? So I looked at this biography, and then I found out when I ordered this book that he had written this one. So I had to get it. So I got that in the mail yesterday. I also been reading, I got this out this morning because this is called The Apprenticeship of Ernest Hemingway, The Early Years, because I wanted to read the chapter on Italy, because when Ernest Hemingway was an ambulance driver, he was sent to Italy with this ambulance corps, and I wanted to read more about it in this book. This is called The Apprenticeship of Ernest Hemingway, The Early Years by Charles A. Fenton. I have a huge Hemingway collection. I have a huge Paulus collection, which I'll show someday in the future. So that's what I'm reading. As far as my diary this morning, I'm on page 366. This is the last week of April 2017. Yeah, and so yeah, I don't know what this week holds. I like my weeks free of any kind of engagements, appointments. I don't like to be involved in the world or be out in the world unless I really have to. I like just staying inside the house, reading my books, Paul Auster, The Winter Journal, being a contemplative Christian, meditating upon the mystical theology of St. John of the Cross, Spanish spiritual writer, reading in the afternoons, The Ambulance Drivers by James McGrath Morris, writing in my diary, drinking coffee, and waiting for the second coming of Christ, waiting to go into the eternal state of glory, where I'll see the vision of God, the glory and the beauty of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So I'm hoping you'll have a good week. I'll probably make a video tomorrow. I might go to thrift stores tomorrow morning. My wife mentioned about going out for breakfast tomorrow morning and then going for a walk somewhere. The weather's really been really nice today. It's all sunny out. Spring-like, the flowers, the tulips, the birds. Everything's blooming. Spring is here. Spring has sprung. So I hope you have a good week, having a good day. Thank you for the subscribers. Thank you for the comments. And until next time, bye.